Good evening. So I think we've got everybody here. It's a little after 8, and really pleased to see. Excuse me. I've been going since about 4:30 this morning. So yeah, just pick your time. Sorry, a little after 5. Excuse me. Really pleased to see the turnout tonight. I think we're really fortunate to have an expert from the USGA here, Mr. Larry Gilhully, who's taken the time out of his busy schedule, spent really the day on the course with our grounds crew, giving a thorough tee to green review of the course. And I'd just like to give you a little bit of a bio to give you an impression for just how lucky we are to have the review we got today. So Mr. Gilhully's been associated with the game of golf since 1959 as a player, caddy, and golf course maintenance worker. After receiving an Evans Caddy Scholarship in 1970, he majored in agronomy, turf science, and holds a BS degree from Washington State University. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. Thank you. Thank you.
That's okay.
I know. I know. I know. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, that's okay. Everybody can't go to the
So after college, he worked as the assistant superintendent at Seattle Golf Club from 1975 to 1983. He joined the USGA Green Section in 1983 as the Western Director. Mr. Gilhully currently provides agronomic advice to golf courses in the Northwest region, with Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia as his primary focus. He works out of his Gig Harbor-based Washington office in these rounds, so a few frequent miles both on the road and a few in the air. That Hawaii trip's probably
Somebody's got to go there.
That's right. Tough job. Somebody's got to do it. In addition to assisting courses in their turf management programs, he also helps conduct several conferences within the Northwest region, assists various groups in fundraising efforts, and is involved in several educational programs that are directed at golfers in the Pacific Northwest. He is also responsible for course preparation inside the ropes for the upcoming 2015 U.S. Open at Chambers Bay, and I'm sure a few of you might want to pick his brain about that after we're done with today's business. So, with no further ado, one other point, you notice we are filming. This will be posted on the club's website so that those members that weren't able to attend tonight will have a chance to hear, in his own words, the kind of assessment of our course and some recommendations for how we can really preserve this quality course that we are lucky to be members of. So with no further ado, Mr. Larry Gilhully.
All right. Thanks, Eric. I'm going to assume you can hear me without a microphone. Is that okay? Good. And I'll move around. That's that side of it. I got to get right to the point of my history with this golf course. Yes, ma'am.
Some people are hearing impaired, and I think that they would be best to use your
Thank you. Is that better? Okay. All right. I came to this golf course, I believe it was around 1971, 72, somewhere in there. This course was built. The first hole, there's a trailer. That's now the 7th hole. And the second hole is a par 3. The third hole is up the hill. The fourth hole is that way. And I have this distinct memory of this golf course, the first time I played it, and standing on the 4th tee, which is now your number 1 tee, looking down and saying, well, I don't want to go in that lake, but why does the fairway go down the right side and then swing out 30 yards up onto that bank and come back? And there were no homes here. There was a set of condominiums on what is now the 4th hole, which was, I can't remember the hole then. And I couldn't figure it out. I walked down, just inquisitive, so I walked down, and as I walked, I noticed that it was scalped pretty badly. And as I got 30 yards out, it was because of the rattlesnake that somebody decided they had to cut up with the mower, and they didn't take the reels up. They didn't run the thing over. They cut it all up. So there's this fairway going way out over the side. So that was my first time I was ever here. It's interesting. What we did today is go around the golf course and look at it from 2 standpoints. We looked at it from a playing condition standpoint today, the playing quality of the golf course. We looked at each one of the main playing areas down the middle and on the sides. So we looked at the green surrounds, which is the number 2 most important area of a golf course, the fairways, which is 3, tees are 4, roughs are 5, and anything inside the roughs, trees and things like that are part of 5. Okay, so that's the way I look at a golf course, the sequence we looked at. And so as far as going around the golf course, we use different tools to come up with reasons and numerical values. I'm going to do a report, so if anybody wants to take notes, you can, but this is all going to be in the report. It'll be shortened down, though, I promise. It just won't be this long. But when we went around and looked at the golf course, start with, we look at the putting greens. And the most important part, and so we have a template, and with this report will be this template. It won't look like this. It's going to be color-coded. And places that are good on your golf course are going to be white boxed. Places that where you got to have a little caution are going to be yellow boxed. And the red boxes are going to be, okay, we need some work here. And overall, this golf course, pretty darn good, considering what you just went through. A month ago, you had a situation, and that situation is it got to 100 degrees, and that happens in this part of the country. The problem is you've got Poa annua, and if you've got Poa annua on fairways at 100 degrees, to keep those fairways alive, they have to have water because your roots are only that deep. You lost water for 3 days. Your life support system was shut off, dead, gone. That grass is gone. And I was shocked at how much grass you have still going around this golf course a month later. I really was surprised because when I was told it's bad, I expected every fairway to look like one. And one's really the only bad fairway, honestly. Of all the fairways out there, there's areas that are bad, but one is the only bad fairway. The rest of the fairways are pretty good. They're recovering. So the life support system was shut off, and it's coming back. So that's the good news. When we looked at the greens, saw some pictures of some Pythium that you had, which you're not the only one that had Pythium this year. There were others in eastern Washington. My son-in-law is the superintendent of Yakima Elks. They got nailed by Pythium about the same time you did, and it came back. They also got nailed in their fairways by Poa annua. So Pythium's a disease that hits within 24 hours. If you get a combination temperature of 100 degrees and 50%, 150, temperature and humidity, it'll take out your greens just like that. It's the reason why 16 and 17 were the worst hit. Where do they sit? Low area, no airflow, surrounded by water, humid. They got hammered. So anyway, so on the greens today, you've now recovered. So what we did was we went around, we did some things that I'll share with you folks so you know what they are, a little show and tell. This is stimp meter. So when you're watching on TV and you hear about the green stimp meter speed, this is what it is. You raise this thing up to 20 degrees, you roll 3 golf balls that direction, you throw 3 golf balls the other direction, you have 6 golf balls, you measure the distance that they roll, and that's the speed of the green. Your greens are supposed to be between 9.5 to 10.5 feet using a stimp meter, okay? Your greens are so sloped that we couldn't use this stimp meter like this. But what the USGA invented was this stimp meter, half the distance, because of golf courses like yours. And when you get up to 11 to 12 feet in speed and you can't find flat areas, you better find 5 to 6 feet of speed. That's what this is. It's a 2X model. It just came out this year. So we used this today on all of your greens. Okay? Now, what we found was some of the most consistent greens you'll find. Flat out, some of the best. Now, it was interesting. The small practice green, which probably is usually the fastest, my guess, it was 10'8". The big practice green was rolled. It was 12'2". You don't want a 6-inch difference. That's a 1 foot plus difference. So the first thing I'm going to tell Mark is, God, don't roll the practice greens. And the idea is you want to have the greens, the practice greens, be within 6 inches, slower or faster, of every green on that golf course. That's consistency. It's not the same speed every day on every green. It's the speed of the practice green that day that matches the speed of the greens that day. That's consistency. So some days it might be 8 feet. Other days it could be 12 feet. But they better all match. That's consistency on a golf course. Your 2 practice greens were wildly inconsistent. 10'8", 12'2". They averaged 11'5". So we took that as a starting number. And every single green on this golf course was 10'9" to 11'7". So if you went on 11'6" as the principal, it would be down to just about 10'11", up to 11'11". And the vast majority of greens fell in that category. But they really fell in the category, they matched that small green that hadn't been rolled. It matched up really well. The other green was a little faster. So overall, the greens were very consistent as far as speed. I would caution this membership to not get these greens too fast, though. They got so much slope in them that if you want to slow down play, just start sticking them on slopes and you'll slow down play. And it's something we're trying to get across to golfers in general, that we don't need speed on greens. We need smoothness, and you've got them. Boy, these greens smooth. We need firmness, but you don't need speed. And if you use slopes, you've got to make sure that it matches the speed of the greens, and that's part of this report. The second tool we used, in addition to the stimp meter, the second thing we look at is the percent of slope on the holes. And all this is just a level. And it measures percent of slope, one way or the other. And I'll tell you, folks, when you get to 11 feet and you start messing around at 3% slopes or higher, you can start to get balls starting to kind of roll back at you a little bit. You get above the hole, it's not stopping. Happy to announce that probably 16 of your greens were pretty dang good. But somebody wasn't happy last night, and Fast Eddie set a couple of holes out there. If you played today, the hole on number 13, 12, oh my. Oh my. So the suggestion is going to be, have one of these in your staff for them to use so that you don't make the mistake of setting a hole on a slope that's too steep. Instead of visually looking at it, have a numerical value you can go with. And so that is going to be part of the recommendations. Overall, though, I think it was pretty fair out there. Very smooth. The big thing I look at is firmness on greens. I will tell you folks today, now I know that a month ago these greens were not firm. These greens had to be soft because they are poa-annua. Now you're fortunate enough to have water on these greens, so the greens made it through. We checked the roots on these greens. They're about an inch. You cannot, in sand, let these things dry down when it's 100 degrees. You just can't do it. So I don't fault the members or the maintenance staff at all for having soft greens and maybe the heights up. You have to do that. In order to get to the conditions you're in now, they had to do that. It's just an agronomic fact. You can't take these things at 100 degrees and have them down. You got to raise them up. Okay? This is a one-year deal that you're trying to pull off here, and there's sometimes you got to give. And so if the practice green is 9 feet that day and the rest of the greens are 9 feet, it's your job as players to figure it out and hit it a little harder. You may get angry about it, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is with poa-annua greens. This is not Palouse Ridge. This is not Wine Valley. Those golf courses have roots. I've used my soil probe. It goes down 8 inches. The roots are blowing out of the bottom of those greens. Those are bent grass greens. Your POA is here. Theirs are there. Guess who gets to use less water? They do. A lot less water. And so there's no comparison between those golf courses. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. The other thing we do is look at firmness. Now today, your firmness was the best. I've done this now for 5 or 6 years with this tool. The best I have seen consistency-wise as far as firmness on any golf course I have ever visited, including brand new golf courses. They just aren't this consistently firm. So the one thing that one of the reasons is because it hasn't rained much recently. It's a little bit, but you haven't had to use the automatic system. And when you got to use the automatic system, that's when too much water gets down on it. Nature does a better job. What this does is it simulates. This is called a USGA True Firm, and it simulates a player hitting an 8-iron into a green. This is 1.68 inches. It's a golf ball. It's raised up to the top of the slot. It's dropped. It ends up penetrating with thousandths of an inch measuring to give you a numerical value on a computer screen. We use this at our championships to test, because we watch the pros hit shots in, usually about 8 irons, and we watch ball reaction for the pros. And what we're looking for the pros is ball hits green, ball goes forward, and that's the next bounce we watch. Does it check? Does it check and release? Or does it check and spin back like a top? We don't want the top at a US Open. We want the ball to check, and then possibly that. If it's a pitching wedge, a gap wedge, something like that, yeah, we can make it a little spin on it. But that's what we're looking for at our championships. Regular members, no. We don't want it that firm. But I don't care how firm your greens are when we go around. I want to look at the consistency from green to green to green. And that's where you had the best I've ever seen. your greens were only separated by 3/100ths of an inch. That's 0.33 to 0.36. The engineer that came up with this, the difference that's statistically different is 2/100ths of an inch. That would be 3.3 to 3.5. You had two greens that were statistically different than the rest of your greens. That is amazing, folks. I mean, the programs that they're running on these greens, don't change them. I don't change these programs. They're top dressed properly. They need to be top dressed a little bit more frequently. The aeration we're going to talk about. But I don't change the fundamentals of the programs on these greens. They're awfully good. The other thing we use this tool for is the approaches. And this is where you're not as strong as the greens. The approaches you want to have within 0.5. And 6 of your greens are within 0.5. About 6 of them are within 0.10, and then there's 6 of them that need some work. And the reason it needs to be firm is all you players that play the game, if the greens are firm, what's the hardest shot in golf? Soft approach. What do? You can't bounce it in. You land it on the green, it bounces over. Because we're not golf professionals. We do not have the ability to spin a golf ball as well as these guys do. So we hit lower trajectory shots. They come in with longer irons or woods. Where do you hit it? You better hit it in the approach. It better be firm so it releases. That's the game. Overall, your approaches are pretty good. Doing a comparison, I won't name names of other clubs. I could name a bunch of them and you'd just be shocked at how bad they are and how good yours are comparatively. So if I'm going to put you in a scale of the top 10%, yeah, I'd say firmness comparison of greens versus approaches, you're in the top 10% of the ones I visited this year. So that's good. I think there's some good programs, and that comes from the top dressing program that they're doing on these approaches. All right. The next thing we use was this again. And this is a problem that you do have on this golf course. You've got some really cool things out here. You also have some things you got to work on. So it's not perfect by any means. It's a problem called collar dams. Now, collar dams are created by the golf course superintendent and the staff since 1970. When the course was built, they have to aerify, usually twice a year. When you aerify, you put a lot of sand down. How do you drag the sand in? In a circle. And when you're going in a circle, dragging sand, the mats that you use naturally push the sand out. As you push the sand out, you start to put more sand on the edge of your green. And so your greens, virtually all of them, have got what are called collar dams. So they need to be addressed. From an agronomic standpoint, collar dams can be a problem in cold climates when there's snow, and if it melts and you get ice. I was down at Sun River this year, severe collar dams on several of their golf courses, several of their greens, wiped out from ice damage, totally because of collar dams. Even though they had drains in their greens, right there, the drain wasn't in the right spot, and they got wiped out. You don't have that problem here because you don't have as much snow and ice, but if it does rain, you could see standing water in front of your greens, and it can make them weaker. Your problem is a playing condition issue, because if you have a green that comes in, if the green is this way, and the slope's coming in at 4%, you have almost every green on your golf course, it goes this way, the next 2 feet next to the green, and then the green comes back at you. So you have 3 different slopes. So wherever your ball lands is a crapshoot. And so the ball reaction, what you're going to get from a playing condition is, ball's going to check on an upslope, ball's going to skip on a downslope, ball's going to check on the green. So this is something that needs to be addressed. Some of them are really bad, others aren't quite as bad. So we're going to go through and on this template, and the ones that are going to be marked red will be the areas that we need to work on. The best answer, the simplest answer, the answer that many clubs have used, is you just come in with a sod cutter, you strip it, drop it, put it back, it's done. 1 to 2 days, done. A lot of courses don't like to do that, so they come in with an aerifier, run it along the high point, soak it, and just pound it with a roller or a plate compactor and push it down. Sun Willows is an example. They had horrible collar dams 2 years ago, and they went after it this past year. I was impressed at how much better their collar dams were, and its playing conditions, and it's getting that ball to react properly on a smooth surface from front all the way onto the green. So that's an area that needs to be worked on, in my opinion. All right, we looked at around the greens. In my opinion, I I don't look at a golf course for my playing ability. I always look at it from a 15 handicap male, 28 handicap female, because that's the average player. We're not all great players, so therefore I'm not a fan of fast greens, extremely fast. I think they need to match. I'm not a fan of heavy rough, especially around greens. I think your rough is too tall around your greens, okay? And I even had a husky smile, so that's good. The worst mowing height, there's 3 ways to slow down a game, is have fast greens and bad hole locations. And the second one is roughs, and have them tall on the sides, and especially if you have them tall around the greens. And then the third one is trees that are down to the ground. Your trees are fine. But the roughs here, you're mowing them at 2 inches. The day they're mowed is fine. They're 2 inches. But it's Sunday, and you're out playing when they're 3 inches. And that is brutal on a regular membership. So the standard rough I would drop to 1 3/4 inches. That's everywhere else. Around the greens, I'm going to go further. As far as I'm concerned, I think that your intermediate rough you've mowed around your fairways is perfect at 1 1/4 inches. You just roll off the fairway, it rolls in, you're penalized, but not that bad. That should be the same thing around the green. And what you have right now is a US Open style of mowing where you go collar, 1 mower pass of 1.5 inches. Is that right?
Well, 1 1/4
1 1/4 inches, yeah, and then you go into this 1 3/4 inches. I would take that 1 1/4 inches and widen it out to the same width as your fairway cut, 1 1/4 inches. Okay, so widen that out further. Okay, so 1 1/4 inches is now not going to be 2 feet or 3 feet, whatever it is. It's going to triple that width. You got to have more room for the short shot inside. At the same time, I would go through this golf course, and Chris, maybe you guys can do this. If you want to get an architect, you can. I think you need to expand your collars more and get into more chipping areas. We looked at the back of number 11 green as an example, and I think Charlie and Mark were flabbergasted when I showed them, but I see it all the time, and I like the idea, and I like the way it looks. Long par 4 uphill, strong golf hole. I'm sure a lot of people go long on that shot, on that hole, coming uphill on their second or third shot. You've got a rough back there that goes into a dip. You could shorten that down to totally, that whole dip back in there could be a collar height dip, chipping area, where you could use a putter, a hybrid, a 6-iron, a 7-iron, an 8-iron, a 9-iron, a wedge. Now you have one choice. Which wedge am I going to hit? And oh, by the way, it's going to be downhill, and I'll never be able to stop the ball, and on it goes. It's difficult to play with rough like this around a green. So I think you need to look at your golf course, hole by hole, and where can we move these chipping areas, the collars, where can we move them out? The idea is to have more fun on your golf course. It's still going to be difficult. You still got to putt. That's the way it is. But I think there's an option to do that on your golf course and your chipping areas around your green. So I would be doing that. You've done a marvelous job of improving the bunkers. I was here last time about 10 years ago, which I'm recommending that I come back sooner, I hope. But the bunkers were bad. There was no definition. And you guys have really done a nice job, the staff, of defining the bunkers and putting in new sand. Nice improvement. Keep doing that until they're done. You know, they're on their way. Fairway bunkers still need to be done. On the fairways, we touched on number 1, number 2, spot on 3. There's a big spot on 7. And just as a background on your fairways, if you look at this golf course, I mean, it's in a valley. And the problems that you have on your golf course are in the valley. Think about when, before this was a golf course, and this used to flood through here, it's silt and clay. And your first fairway is just solid silt and clay where there's problems. And that's the center portion. And even the lower portion over here, there's some problems over there. The second hole, it gets to be a problem on that ridge, and I'll tell you why that is. But really, most of your problems are in the lower lying area of this golf course. Because as soon as you hit 11 and you go till you get to 16, there are no issues. There's a few POA spots here and there, but there are no complete wipeout areas. Soil. Soil's up. It's great soil. It's got a little more sand in it. And so you've got this dichotomy of soils here that make things a little difficult. So your fairways in general the problems are down low. Okay, so we start with that. You have a water quality issue here. You folks know about this. there's some bad water that you have. It has salts in it. And the spot on number 2, okay, that's from about 150 to 100. The spot on number 7, it's a big area that's 120 yards off the tee, 150. Next time you play there, look at the grass that's dead. It's white. That's salts. So you have a salt issue there. Those issues can be taken care of, and there's a program we're going to talk about as far as aeration, vertical mowing, top dressing, flushing, putting down gypsum to get the salts out, and really going after it. It needs to be started tomorrow. Okay? This is where you all come in. You got to support. The rules of golf cover ground under repair. And so you need to address and attack, number 1, especially the right side landing area. And that's not a salt issue. That's just POA that just died out in the summer. You got to attack it tomorrow. It needs to be started because your temperatures are perfect for this right now. I don't care if there's a tournament tomorrow. I get to leave. I don't care if there's a tournament the end of this week or next Monday. The rules of golf cover it. It's ground under repair. You use a paint line. You don't use a paint line, and if it's aerified and part of the process is going to be poking holes, the player gets relief. So that needs to be addressed. 2 needs to be addressed. 7 needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed soon. And it should be done as part of an aeration and slicing program. And you have the tools to do that. Yes, sir. Hole 3, there's a spot that we saw. We didn't go down.
About the 225.
Okay, it would be the same area. Yeah, same thing. Any of those spots. The good news is it's not the whole golf course. Now, we're going to go through this whole thing. When I say we, these guys are going to go through this whole thing. And I think Jeremy asked me earlier, well, is it going to be perfect? Everything's going to be great next year? No. Can't guarantee that at all.
Oh, no, he does.
Jeremy does because that's his job. I won't. No, it's.
Records show the Ostrander is now my agent. For questions to him.
So there's going to be some seeding that needs to be done right away. So we'd ask your indulgence to allow the staff to do that. And I think based on the exception of a couple of Huskies, everyone's going to agree. Just kidding, just kidding. How many Cougars are there here, by the way? Anybody go to the Idaho game?
Too many.
Wasn't that fun?
How many Huskies?
Except that first pass. Are you kidding? I don't need to ask about that. Okay, I admit it. I went 2.5 years to the University of Washington, 2.5 years to Washington State. I got to see both. I spent 2.5 years in the 6 killer years. I got the introduction of the wave and the color, the attitude and the colored section, all that. Yeah, but they didn't have moms and dads weekend. No, they didn't. That's the difference between the two.
So you couldn't cut it at UW, huh?
No, I got educated at Washington State. All right. All right. This could go on for an hour. So we looked at the tees, and as far as the tees are concerned, you have some work that needs to be done. I think the tees should be treated like the greens. They need to be aerified just as much. They have thatch on them, and they need to be addressed. This will be improved compared to what you just went through as far as heat. But you've got to get some drought-tolerant grasses in these tees. You have a few tees that are out of alignment. We looked at the alignment of the tee markers. I'm a big advocate of this, the use of T-squares. And a T-square is a plastic device made out of 1-inch PVC. It's not very difficult, and it makes a T. And if that thing's aiming at Charlie back there, then the markers are going to be right there, and they're going to be right there.
Yeah.
And when a member comes up to the maintenance staff and claims that they hit a ball out of bounds because the markers were out of alignment, the staff didn't do it. Golfer did it. Because it's infallible. A tee. That's where you're supposed to. Of course, that's the answer. But it's amazing how often golfers will aim off of a tee or tee markers. You can't blame the maintenance staff for that. You got to just pay attention. But it does happen, sadly. And so it eliminates that problem. So we looked at that. And as far as the tees, overall, the tees, they need more maintenance on them, more top dressing, more aeration, more seeding. We talked about the roughs. Finally, the trees. This might be a topic that could get some people fired up. Maybe not. I don't see anybody here with pitch on their chest, so you're not a tree hugger, so that's good. Trees are a difficult topic because a lot of folks get very emotional about trees, but they do change their golf course. This golf course is completely different than it was 30 years ago because the trees don't grow smaller. They grow bigger and they grow wider. And so as I went around your golf course as an outsider, just looking at your course, stood on the first tee, Everything's fine from up above, went down to the blue tee left. I couldn't see the water. I saw the homes I'm going to hit when I'm trying to avoid the tree. The tree should have a 3-step program. The flip on the chainsaw, pull the cord, and drop it. Take the whole tree out. Now, I dropped that tree because of safety issues for your homeowners on the right. There's a safety issue there. You're forcing players to hit the ball to the right of that tree. Also, half that tee is not being used. You can't see the hazard, which is beautiful. It's a gorgeous view you cannot see. You have an out of bounds left that stops balls from going on the left side. So I would take that tree out. Okay, the next hole is number 4. And it's your choice. This is your golf course. You decide what you're going to do, but number 4. Not suggesting tree removal, suggesting tree pruning. The 2 trees on the left, the cottonwoods, big ones. There are limbs that are sticking out for the player that plays from the blue tee that forces you to hit the condos into the wind. On a slice hole, you're going to hit the condos, and I'll bet you get a lot of activity over there. And so what you want to do is cut off, and specifically I took a photograph, and I'll put in the report arrows aiming at the specific limbs that you would cut off that tree to open up the angle to get balls that you can at least hit a little further left, whether it's low or however you hit your shot, so you just don't hit those condos. It's a safety issue, in my opinion. The 5th hole, there's a pine that sits on the right side about 50 yards in front of the blue tee, and that would be a 3-step program. It's just one tree. It blocks the entire right side visually of your landing zone on a dogleg right. Again, you're aiming players to the left. That tree, and a lot of times when I look at trees, I look at what they will be, not what they are. That tree gets bigger. It just keeps going. I take that tree out from a play standpoint. Finally on number 9, when you stand on the blue tee, you have half your hole gone. It's just gone on the right side. I know it's a short hole. The good player will say, well, yeah, but we just hit over it. Yeah, but what about everybody else that can't just hit over it? It's a safety issue, folks, on that hole. You need to take that tree out because you're forcing your players to aim directly at incoming traffic on 1. You need to take that tree out. So I'd take that tree would be gone. On number 10, I looked at it, the back tee, and nobody ever looks at the back tees because nobody plays them, but the pine is sticking out too far, and then that tree that's next to it's got a couple limbs that need to come out, and then you can hit your draw off that tee, since I know now you hit a draw because I saw where the trees were and they're on the right side, so he has to hit a draw. What other holes did we look at? Let's see. Back tee on number 12. Number 12, was that the small tree?
That's a little ash you wanted to trim. Just
Trim on the back left side, yep. Okay. And number 16. 16, you have several tees. Blue, left blue tee by the cart path, and then the blue tee that's there, and then the gold tee. There is an overhanging willow on the lake. Don't take the tree out, but you cannot see the ball land in your right side of your fairway because of lower hanging limbs. Limb that tree up so that you don't have to hit and run, because I'm sure that's what happens is people hit a shot and then start running to see is the ball, is it inbounds, where did it go? You never want to have a hit and run shot on a golf course, so I'd limb that tree up. So really I'm only talking about very few trees. That's pretty good, because most golf courses, my nickname is Clear Cut Gilhooly. Everybody thinks that all I want to do is take trees out. I want to take trees out that impact shade on greens. You don't have that issue here. It's really pretty good. I'll give you kudos on the trees. So again, those will be the main topics on the playing conditions that we'll be touching on. We touched on the fairways, we touched on the greens, the surrounds, the tees. One of the things I want to touch on, and I do want to have questions, this is going to be an interaction, is your aeration timing, and specifically how it's done at this golf course. Having been in the industry, I live over at Canterwood, so I live on a golf course, and we set our aeration schedule first and set our tournaments around the aeration schedule. For the good of your golf course, I would urge you to do the same. Aerating in August cannot be done, and that's when you were scheduled to. I applaud this superintendent and the staff for making the right decision. Good grief, don't aerofy when it's 100 degrees. You will wipe your greens out. So I think that The middle of September, sadly, you're not going to like this, but the time to aerify is right now, right at the peak of the best time to play. And I'm sorry. Canterwood, we did ours September 9th. And for 2 weeks, I got to listen to all my buddies scream at me like it was my fault that we aerified our greens. But it has to be done. They're recovered now, and they're moving forward. But you got to hit them at the right temperature so that you can get the most reaction and the most improvement out of your greens. Summer's not the answer. So spring is fine. You're in April. Personally, for the turf, your compromise is actually in April. You'd like to go in May, but now we're starting getting into playing time, so you go in April. This needs to be in mid-September. So I'd encourage the committee and the board to take that under advisement. Now this is a fun one. This will get the topic going. If I were to ask the audience, that's not the right way to do it. Let me try it this way. How many people think that a golf course should be totally green all the time? And how many people think a little brown's okay? And how many thinks a lot of brown's okay? That'd be me. But that's on fescue. You can't, it's so difficult to do here. You should have a little bit of brown. That says that your golf course the water's been backed off. It's difficult to do when it's 100 degrees. You cannot do it when it's 100 degrees and your life support system gets shut off. You saw what happened. So you have to be on an edge. It's very difficult to pull it off. You have to have a lot of hand watering. You have to have the tools for the superintendent and staff to understand when they can water, how much they can water, at what time they can water. You don't have the tools. You don't have a station, a weather station. You need a fundamental weather station as a tool for these guys to start with. The second tool you got to have, and I think you're going to get, are portable moisture meters. And this is something when we have any national championship, we shut off the automatic systems. We just shut them off completely. And we go 100% based on computers, ET, and then we really look at our mobile moisture meters. And that meter gives us a percentage of water in the top 3 inches, and then we irrigate off of that. When it's 100 degrees, you're on a fine line. You guys don't have those tools yet. You need them. That'll help, okay? A little bit of brown here and there is fine. A little bit of brown on tees, there's no issue. You get to put it on a peg. A little brown on the fairways is harder. And it's very difficult with Poa annua that's only that deep. You got to be careful. You're on an edge. On the greens, if you go too far, they get too firm. So you got to be careful there too. But it's okay if there's a little bit of brown. There's a great article. It's timeless from 1972 by Al Radko. Al Radko's article was "Green is not great." And he goes into it, and I mean, he goes into it and talks about the problem we have with golf courses being too green. If you want to spend more green, have your golf course more green. Because you have to mow it more, you have to fertilize it more, you got to water it more, you have to have more labor. It's all the wrong direction to go. So, but realizing full on, when it's 100 degrees, there's got to be water on this golf course because you got Poa. Okay, so it's a hard subject. I know there's folks, especially the homeowners. I live on the golf course too. Love to see the green. But it's okay if it's a little bit brown now and then. I live on the west side. It's a little different over there than in Tri-Cities. This is a little harder place to do. So it's a subject worth conversing about. So listen, any questions? Let's get, yes ma'am.
I don't want to be sexist, but we have a group of women who play here. And there are lots of trees that get in our way. We don't hit it that far, particularly number 9.
Yes.
Okay.
So on number 9, you're...
Because all of your conversation has been from the blue tees. We don't play the blue tees.
That you're right, and thank you for saying that, because I forgot one of the things I had a note there, that this club I think has done one of the best jobs I've seen. First of all, they've got family tees, which I am a huge advocate of, and I've found that it's not just kids that play those family tees. It's what we should be having, which is more not soccer moms, golf moms. The family comes out, and it's a pace of play thing, but it's also the aging golfers, male and female. At Overlake, they got started over there. It's phenomenal. They're little husky tees. I hate to say that, but that's what they're called. Little husky tees are incredible. It's the same idea as family tees. But you've done one thing better. You've added forward tees at 4,800 yards. That's where you should be. And so ladies should have an option, and you do. You have those tees and the red tees. In my opinion, no question, the red tees are too long for the average lady player. They're too long. 4,800 is where you should be playing from. And I agree, I did not look at any trees that might be in your line. So on 9, that tee angle coming off that tee on the left side, it's got to be on the left side. No question. You'd prune it or take it out. So I'm looking, excuse me, as I walk here, since it's 9 right there, we thought we looked at every tee, darn it. The right side or left side? So it'd be on that side.
You're right.
Yeah. I see the red markers there, and then the greens are a little bit to that side of that. So those trees that are there are blocking a player that wants to fade a ball. Well, then you prune them. Yeah, you prune them. The only question you have would be safety of any ball that might come in the direction of 1. That would be the only question. But it's out of bounds, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
That's why that tree's there on the blue tee, to stop people from hitting the lake. No, it's
okay. Thank you for bringing that up because no question. And is that the only hole that I missed?
That's the only one that
Yeah, that one.
that's the worst one.
9. Okay, I'll put it in the report then.
Ridiculous.
I apologize for missing that.
Yeah.
It's always come right out.
There's a grove there just to the left off the tee. There's like 4 trees.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can either put them behind the other side of the purple tree.
Yeah.
At the 150, yeah, I can see the ones at the
On
150.
the right side.
On the right
From
side.
here, standing as you're
Yeah.
looking at it.
Yeah, I can
on the
see it right there.
side, just beyond the 150 from here.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
Larry, from the things that we spoke about today, and the things that we saw in the trees that we would talk about removing, that would be one that would be removed from the line of sight in the play. It can't be trimmed and
Tree
just
step.
put back, that just disfigures the tree. From what Bev was speaking about, I would lean towards that would be one of those.
That's removed. It's the one that's the Y shape right there. Correct? That's the one I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
There are a number of places in the rough where there are holes, maybe 6 inches, and it's like tiger spots all around and tufts of grass. Did you notice those?
Which
A lot
part of the
them
golf
are
course?
Near the greens.
Which part of the golf course?
Oh, for example, on 5 to the right of the hole, as there's a kind of a steep bank there coming down into the green.
Okay.
And that's these patches, real patchy.
Could have been Poanga that died in amongst the grass.
Could have been.
Probably. They need to be
I'm just
overseeded.
wondering.
Yeah.
It's spotty, and so it's different from like the brown areas on the fairways. It's a distinct clump
Yeah,
of
you had,
long grass.
you did have some grasses I noticed around some of the greens. We saw it,
Number 3 on the back.
number 3 on the back. That's right. We saw that
That's
spot.
exactly what he's describing is that condition where we don't have the backup sprinkler heads to the greens.
Uh-huh.
And what we end up getting is a lot of those spots, and when they burn out, they don't get put back. You can't grow that spot back in until the cooler weather of fall. But I really think the things that you're addressing is because on our irrigation system, we don't have backup sprinklers that shoot away from the greens that can pick those up. So those become hand water issues, and then it's just a maintenance thing. But this is the time of the year to go back and be repairing all of those type of issues. But
Okay.
I do know what you're referring to.
Okay, so it was simply lack of water
Yeah, lack
during the
of-
hot weather that did that.
Exactly. While we're trying to control the amount of moisture that we're putting on the greens, the areas around the outside of the greens start to burn up because most traditional irrigation systems have backup heads that shoot away from the
Right.
greens and they control all the areas that they call the surrounding areas. Our irrigation system does not have that. And so when those areas get burned out, once they get burned out, you need the cool weather to go back in and be overseeding. You could try to overseed those in July. They're not going to come back. Once the cooler weather gets
Now.
in, that's when we need to go in and be punching those areas, overseeding those, and get them into recovery mode at this time of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing real quick too on mowing heights, so y'all know, y'all have home lawns, probably bluegrass, probably gorgeous, and all mowed at 2 to 3 inches. The higher you mow grass, the deeper the roots go, less water you got to put down. Okay? Think about a golf course. The roughs are at under 2 inches. Okay, so they're down to here. The roots are going up. The fairways, are under a half an inch. Down they go, up come the roots. Poa annua is even shallower. It's not bluegrass anymore when it gets under 2 inches. Now it's poa annua. 2 inches in the rough, it'll survive, but not in the fairways. Now you go to the greens and the tees and forget it. It's just, that's the problem these guys face at different grass. Yes?
We have a couple areas where, for instance, on the upslope side of number 18 green, where the grass just kind of sits on top of the dirt. I mean, you can lift the grass up.
Yeah.
There's just actually no root structure. There's a couple other places like that.
Same thing on number 2.
Larry,
Same
before
thing.
you go, we grab back the mic. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
maybe repeat the question.
The question was on number 18, on the bank, we saw a weak area, which looked like number 2 also. And there's some salt involved. There's thatch involved. Okay, so you have excess organic material. So it's like a sponge, is the best way to describe this. And a sponge, once it gets wet, it'll hold water but you can't get it wet. And so you can't get water into that profile to wet it. So one of the things we're going to talk about and suggest here is on number 2, on number 7, on number 18, all these areas. First thing to do is right now come in and put down gypsum. And if we can't do it now, we're going to do it in the spring. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. Calcium will replace the sodium and get rid of the salt. Okay, that's huge. And then we're going to come in and vertical mow and try to get rid of some of the thatch in that area. Try to get water in. We're going to put down in a wetting agent. It's called Revolution. And that hopefully will get water in and hold water in that area. Just the whole idea is just get water into there because like you said, once it dries up, it's gone. And then get grasses that can handle it.
I know Mr. Oldtran would say just don't hit it.
Yeah.
But I do.
I hit it there the other day, so it didn't really work. I'm with you, Ray, on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I live on number 1 at the 150-yard line.
Yes.
And I was working out of my backyard one afternoon, and I saw the crew come over with the little old red truck, and they had dirt in the back, and they had shovels, and they were, taking shovelfuls and on the dead places and, spreading that like that. Now, it's real hard packed, and nothing was loosened up. I'm just curious, and then they came with something spreader and went over it, and then they left.
What we were basically doing is because we don't have the ability in the heat and at this time of the year to completely open that up, we were just hand sanding and seeding the dead areas, seeing if we could put some type of seed and compost on them so that when we do irrigate that it would germinate. But we don't have the ability to open them up at this time. We weren't ready to aerify. We were doing the same things on all the par 3s, all the tees. We were working on the landing areas. But all they were doing at the 150s and through that area, they were just sanding and seeding this, just like you would do with your hand rivets and things. That's what they were doing. They were just putting it on the surface. Then they were coming in after that. They stop in the morning and they try to do hand watering there. The limits that we have, though, when you're looking at the size of our crew and how much hand water you can do and things like that, it kind of sets you back that way. But that's what they were actually doing. It was a sand and seed mixed with compost, and they were putting it in the burned out areas.
Mark, what are you doing on from 150 in? Because you guys quit mowing at the 150.
Right now what I'm doing is I'm mowing that at 850 one time a year. We've painted it ground under repair. Through the heat, we weren't making any progress with that. We're painting more ground under repair. We talked to Larry, and in the report we're going to talk about root pruning the big locust trees because he can just see where it's just pulling the moisture out. We were actually losing so much turf on that I just pulled back. I said I'd rather paint everything ground under repair, get whatever grass I can growing now, and once we get to cooler weather, let's look at it again and revisit it at that time. So right now, that's only being mowed the one time, and we're just kind of doing our best with it, trying to fight through this.
Let me have that real quick. Let's stay on this subject on number 1, and to answer a little bit what they're going to try to do, and what the real answer is. I think we all know what the real answer is. Bingo. So to try to help, you've got all these trees on the right side. You can't lose the trees. They're safety. They're important. But there are roots all over. It's been resodded once. The sod, when we pulled the sod back that was dead, littered with roots underneath. So you've got an issue. So let's cut the roots, number 1. That whole rough area, you cannot irrigate with an automatic system because as soon as you turn it on for 10 minutes, you got standing water in the center of the fairway. So that eliminates that idea. So what you can do, though, is put small misting heads that connect into the system, and they only put down about 8/10 of a gallon of water a minute, and you can mist at certain times of the day whenever you wanted to. You would have to take relief from the area, but the water doesn't go any higher than this. The idea is that you grow grass there and not put it on the fairway where there's too much water. Then we get to the problem of the fairway, and it's clay underneath. It's black layer. It's anaerobic. You aerify deep, which is great until you hit the rock, and then that breaks your machine. So the answer is exactly what you just said, is what you did on 16. That's the answer. But you've got other things in this operation I think you need to address first. So you try these approaches on one as best you can for a year or so. If they don't work, if you get no progress, then we got to look at a capital expenditure to redo that fairway. And that's what needs to be done. The best fairway you got on this golf course is 16. Turf-wise, the best fairway you got. I mean, it's as healthy as a horse. And so you need to do the same thing. But let's try some other attempts and see what we can come up with. And if white paint has to be part of it, white paint's part of it. It's a shame, but you know, unfortunate. Is there another? Yes, sir.
So is this a budget issue, or can we maintain this course at the same level of expenditures that we're spending now? Do we need to spend more money on the golf course to keep the level of play where we expect it?
I think that you need to tweak some things. Your budget's fine. I don't know about the capital on that fairway. That's not a cheap proposition. You need certain pieces of equipment that need to be added, and I'm going to touch on those. One of the things is a way you fertilize, and it's really going to be following the way the farmers all do around here with a liquid method, with the cheapest fertilizer you can buy, and you've got to upgrade two things. You've got to get an 1,100 gallon pre-mixing tank with a proportioner, and you got to get a 300 gallon sprayer. And once you get those, you're going to be able to save several thousands of dollars on your fertilizer, the type you're using. And then you'll be able to go into a light and frequent spray program of fertilization on these fairways. You aren't going to spend more, you're going to save money, but you're going to get your fairways better. It'll be healthier. So I don't think it's a budget issue necessarily. There's certain line items you're going to need to add, and I'm going to suggest certain things. That capital improvement that's a big one. So I'll let you guys figure that one out, and when you can do it. But I think your budget's okay. 800 and, what is it? 850, well, 830, yeah. That's, I live at Canterwood. Ours used to be 1.2. I think we're about 850. Budget killed us. I mean, the Club Corp owns the golf course now, so the members don't own it anymore. So, yeah.
The Poana, all the dead spots in the fairways are basically Poana that's died out because of the heat.
Heat, salt, soil conditions, thatch. One of the things that's interesting on this golf course I was not prepared for is your earthworms. You've got massive amounts of earthworms on your lower holes, and you also have them on some of your upper holes. The beauty of earthworms is they take care of your thatch because they pull the soil up into your organic, so you don't have a thatch issue. There's other areas you got horrific thatch issue. There's no earthworms. Not suggesting you get rid of earthworms nor promote them. They are a play issue. I mean, you end up with bare areas all over your golf course in the fall from earthworms, and so it's interesting. So
This course was originally all bent grass.
yeah.
And so Poana takes over. Now it's dead. How can we fight the Poana?
There are some chemical measures that you could come into. I would not do this on a broad scale. I would do test areas where you might test various products. There's a bunch of them. The newest one that's coming, in fact, this is a good topic to mention to everyone, is called PoaCure. PoaCure is a new product that's on an experimental use permit right now, and it selectively removes poa-annua out of bent grass greens. And there's nothing that does that. And it does it very slowly, but it also takes it to the dirt. And your greens are 80 to 90% poa-annua. And if you want dirt greens, it'll do it. The reason I mention that is because the new age of the internet, there's a lot of information out there. You can go on and Google stuff, and you're going to see stuff on there on the first page that, wow, this is really cool. Then you go to page 2, 3, and 4, and you get into the goofballs. And the goofballs will give you all sorts of goofy ideas on there, and it's internet agronomy is what it is. You got to be really careful. And so for this product, PoaCure, it's methiozoline is the name of it, you just got to be very careful. There are golf courses using it with success. Palouse Ridge, Colfax Muni, the little 9-holer, they did their practice green. The green was 60 to 70% POA. They did it in the fall. Last spring they came out and it was dead, 60 to 70%. By the end of the summer, the green was 100% bent. Now, do you want to go through that? No. But you could resod the greens, maybe, someday. You might be able to resod the greens with bent grass. The fairways, whole different ballgame. That's a tough one. But you could, there are products out there that will take out POA and bent. The other thing you need to do is raise your mowing heights in your fairways, because Kentucky bluegrass has to be at 3/4 of an inch or higher. And that impacts playing conditions. And golfers like to have a little tighter. Now 3/4 is up there, but anyway. Yes, sir.
Larry, where's the industry at far as varieties to use in the saltier clay soils?
Okay, the grass that you have that's out there right now is, I believe, I haven't done a forensic test or anything, but I think it's Folks alkali grass. And that grass was put on this golf course, I don't know when. But the next time you all play on number 3, as soon as you hit the fairway, you'll see it. It's a brown looking grass and you're going, oh, this thing looks dry. That's Folks alkali grass. It's the way it looks. Real fine leaf blade, real stiff, but boy, what a ball lie. I mean, the ball lie is phenomenal. It's a bunch grass, it doesn't spread, so it's real slow. So some of these areas, I'm going to suggest that you use Folks alkali grass. On number 2, that shows a salt damage issue. On number 7, salt damage. Number 18, salt damage. This grass works. And so if nature's showing you that I'm the most adapted species, I don't care what color it is, I just don't want dirt. That grass works. And so that's the grass I would try. You know, that's the best I know is Folks alkali. It's been around for a long time. Somebody put it out there. Don't know who did, but it works. So you also have Bermuda grass here too, which is different. Those of us from California, I lived down there for 9 years, think that Bermuda grass, some people think it's a weed. All I know is that in dry areas where it's brown, it's grass, and it's usually in the rough. Best spot that I saw was on 5, around some of your bunker faces. Number 5, by that same pine tree that you go out, it's a big brown area there. Look a little closer, folks. It's not brown. It's got Bermuda grass everywhere. So that grass survives in Richland, Washington, and further. You even go north of that. It's amazing to me that that grass would survive up here. I should have said Kennewick. I apologize. Oh, okay. I knew that. I was just checking. Go Cougs. Any other questions, folks?
I got a question. Curiosity. We punch the greens, sand them. What about using clay in there instead of all sand?
Yeah.
Get better water retention, or is it
You're
something
correct. Clay would give you better water retention, no question. It would bind up those greens. Best example I could give you is, well, first of all, the USGA method of construction is a very precise percentage of medium-sized sand, fine sand, and coarse sand, and an incredibly small percentage of soil, less than 3% silt and clay. So if you put any clay in, it's got to be an incredibly small amount. If you put too much in, you will bind that soil, you'll lock it up, and it'll hold water. It won't go through. I've had people ask me that question on practice tee, for example. You get tired of wiping out their clubs on practice tees with sand all the time. Well, it'll lock up your tee. That's the problem. We see golf courses that get flooded. Right now, the Common Ground down in Colorado has still got 4 greens that are underwater on their golf course, and it's now 3 weeks. And that type of situation, when the water goes down, what's left? Well, there's going to be some silt and clay, so they're going to have to poke those greens a lot and open them up. So, yeah, you bet. What a nice group. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the weather station.
Yes.
What parameters do you need to
Well, the main one, if you want to take it from there, is evapotranspiration. The temperatures that are going on a daily basis and how much water is coming out of that soil, so you can then plug in what percent of water you want to irrigate that next night. It's a tool that really helps determine how much water you want to be putting down.
So you need more than a weather station.
Yeah.
You need the tool to
Yeah.
take corrective action, if you will, or appropriate action.
Yes. Yeah. Tie it into your irrigation system, your computer, and you get a ton of information out of it. And I know most golf courses have some form of a weather station, testing on any number of things that they do. Yeah. If I had to choose between the two, though, it'd be hard. The mobile testing device versus the weather station, boy, that'd be
I
tough.
think you need to have both. The other thing about the weather stations is that with our different types of soil and our different atmospheres around the course, I think that what they would do is they would put monitors into certain areas. Like up on 12 and 13 is completely different than down on number 1. I think that data would have to come in at least 7 different sources around here. And then you would take that data and be able to adjust the irrigation system. Because, I'll be honest, a lot of times, we're just guessing. We don't have a lot of the information. A lot of the things that happens in the course of the year with the soil, if you knew each day what the evaporation rate was in each area, you could fine tune that to the point that you're supposed to. Because, do we overwater? Probably. Who doesn't? With your lawns, with anything. But if you had more technology and more information that you could use to dial that irrigation system in, I think you'd be way ahead of the game. Your water usage would go way down. But I think it's a system that would have to have at least 7 different monitors, because you'd be able to monitor up on 12 and 13. Down in the low-lying areas on number 1 are completely different than over on number 2. So you'd want to have not just one blanket system, you'd need to have several sensors. But I think both of the tools he's referencing, the weather station with the monitoring devices and the handheld probes, those are a must. You know, we need to start to use that type of technology to help ourselves out.
Yeah. I'd forgotten completely about the in-ground stuff. There's the UGMO system. There's all sorts of systems out there. That's a great point right there.
One of the things that the committees and the board are going through in the next few days and couple of weeks is we're putting together budgets. So what we're hoping to do out of this information, there's been a lot of things that are surfacing that we need to do to make our golf course the golf course that we want. And we're going to encourage Mark to be very aggressive in what he asks for, both from a standpoint of capital and operating. So don't think that we're just listening and nodding our heads and not going to do anything with this information, because it's going to be in our 2014 plan.
Just to echo what Terry said, I think, when we saw the events of August unfold, that we were unanimous as a board and really grounds committee that protection of this golf course, preservation and restoration is the #1 priority. It's the reason we're all here. It will be the focus of the board, not just for 1 year, but I think for the next several years to come.
A question, sir? Okay. Not seeing any more hands?
So if there are no further questions, really, I'd like to suggest a round of applause for.
That's it.
I think we're very fortunate to have somebody with his experience and really credentials spending time on the course, and we intend to take best advantage of the advice he's given us. And I do think there'll be a recommendation for you to come back and monitor our progress every so often to make sure we're on track.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
I'm sorry.